Absolutely. Hello, everybody. Phil Kandera, founder of CarZeus, prior vehicle acquisition company to the automotive space. Vehicle acquisition meaning you want to sell your vehicle. We offered a digital platform for you to upload your information into, so we could start communications, present offers, easily communicate via software, text messaging, into leading appointments into a physical brick and mortar door, and turning those visits into sales.
Great, great. So Phil, why don't you tell us a little bit about you? Tell what's your background? How did you come interested in the car dealership industry? Because it must be very interesting to be like inside this, especially like I understand sometimes in Texas specifically, it's very valued industry. And also like maybe before, like what were you doing before CarZeus too?
Yeah, so a little bit of background on me is I spent 23 years in the automotive space total. 17 years of that space was in the retail automotive space, where I was in large franchise dealerships, brands like Nissan, Honda, GMC, and I worked my way all the way from the kid that was selling cars and was in charge of the internet department, because I was the kid that could type. So it went from the kid that could type in the internet department throughout the sales journey, into the management journey, into the finance journey, and ending with the general manager role of a big franchise store, doing multi-million-dollar sales per year. And great experience, but I always wanted to have something of my own. I wanted to take something also that seemingly was kind of an archaic industry, which the automotive space traditionally is interested in doing old-fashioned things, but wanting new results. And so there wasn't really anybody out there that really, I felt, that could pull the two together. And that's all I decided to do, was to pull the two together in one particular part of the journey when people are trying to buy a car. And that journey specifically was the part where people are trying to get rid of the one that they have, and they were tired of all the dealership games and the trade-in tricks, and they just wanted transparent answers. So yeah, I broke away from my 17-year tenure in the retail space, and went to go be a poor entrepreneur, and get some software built, and build a process and a brand, and turn this thing into an acquisition center. And that's what CarZeus was. So.
Great, awesome. So then you were basically you grew in the car dealership industry, and after that, after you saw those little or those the I don't know if it's right to say, but the vices of that industry, you decided to try to tackle that in a very different way. So
yeah, I knew there was a demand out there for something to happen in a way more efficient manner, and the people seem to like it.
Right. So then, like, what's like, how did you come up with the idea of CarZeus? I mean, obviously you identified these different problems, but how did you came up with, like, we need to have a specific platform that can, merge those two things together and try to make an experience much better for the user?
Good question. So it all actually started back in 2008, when the BlackBerry was the coolest phone at the time. Some of you may remember this. It had all the buttons on it. It was one screen at the top, and it was like the hottest phone if you were in business. And basically, we we at a car dealership that I worked for were tasked to get offers on vehicles before we ever presented the number to the customer. And we would get those offers from automotive wholesalers. So these were people that kind of the middleman between dealerships and auctions. And we were required to call 3 or 4 of those people. But when we called 3 or 4 of those people, each conversation took 15 to 20 minutes. So you figured the person that was there that was looking for an answer that seemingly should take 5 to 10 minutes was over an hour sometimes just to get that answer. So here came the game playing and, you know, trying to act like we're doing something else when we're not really doing anything at all. And we're just waiting. And, you know, it was that in that instance that I said, man, we could really take technology, even though the BlackBerry was the BlackBerry at the time, we could just take text messaging alone. And even though it was, you know, 3 times to get to the last letter on one button, it was still something I didn't need to call 4 people to have a 15 to 20 minute conversation with. If we could just do it this way. So it was really born back then. And then as the years kind of went on and I really started to get a lot more tenure and matured a little bit more in the business, it gave me the opportunity to see how archaic the systems were when it came to auctions, and how archaic the systems were when it came to stocking and inventory, how fast the inventory went through the system, the check-in process, and then sourcing. The sourcing was a big concern, because if you're at a Chevrolet store and you're taking in a bunch of Chevrolets, when there's a Ford store right down the street, you might want to have some Fords on your lot. But if you're only taking in Chevrolets, now you got to go to the auction to get all these Fords. Well, dealerships need inventory, and that was a way for them to source the vehicles outside of it, was to start a vehicle buying center. And this is now starting to become a bigger thing. It's a new way to get a lead. And so, you know, I think really, like, I just was able to kind of see a little bit into the future on what the industry might be needing. And quite honestly, like, the part of that was the industry kind of feeding into it. And I guess, you know, I'm sort of a little bit of imposter syndrome on this, but I guess I kind of got it right on this one, where the industry, you know, people started demanding a different level of experience, and it fed right into what CarZeus had to offer for people. So little bit of looking in the mirror and not admitting that everything's right, which is sort of one of the things that I kind of talk about the auto industry. Is sometimes I say it's the private jet syndrome, meaning if the private jet keeps getting gassed up, what's wrong? There's nothing wrong, right? Mm-hmm. And that's still happening today, but there is some stuff wrong, and there is some opportunities out there to improve things in many different industries. And you know, there's always going to be a Jeff Bezos, right? Who's next? So,
right, yeah, it's interesting because what you're saying is like, maybe like, and maybe that can also be something that we can all learn from here. The fact that you can look at your current industry where you work in, and, you know, try to see beyond the current processes, the current ways, you know, the status quo of the industry, and try to question that, and try to see if is this really working, and sort of, you know, maybe that will come up with an idea to try to solve some things that maybe others haven't seen, or maybe others that don't want to see it. So that was really, really good. And what about like the major challenges in building CarZeus, like from your perspective as a founder?
Everything. No, it's you know, that's a really good question. I think if you're somebody that's looking to do something on your own, or you're already in the operation of it, as we all know, there's always going to be challenges, but you got to be ready to pivot. And we did that. Initially, CarZeus was launched as a SaaS service to become a plugin on dealerships' websites. How it ended was not far from that, but it wasn't exactly how we started. So I have three major pillars in my, and I guess kind of my business sense is you got to be coachable, you got to be positive, and you got to be adaptable. Well, adaptable was a really key component, and trust me when I say this, like I feel like I hit almost every iceberg that was out there, and I know I didn't for sure, but man, it ain't easy, and it costs a lot, and balance is the key. Anything that you can do for yourself, mentally, physically, and emotionally, to balance everything out is very, very important. And I think that's one of the main things that I if I can preach anything today is like, don't get lost in don't get lost and lose yourself in it all, because of you is the reason why you thought of the idea to begin with. And sometimes we get a little far into it, and sometimes we lose sight. And so, yeah, there's a ton of challenges, right? But to get a little more in depth and to kind of lose the motivational speaking portion that I'm going on right now is, I think you got to start with, what demand are you fulfilling, or what thing are you fixing? Whether you're starting something or whether you're already in something, everything can always be improved. But it's all about what the consumer wants, and what they demand, and how can we help create a solution around that, of course, and of course you got to monetize it, or else then you're a nonprofit, which they even monetize. So there's challenges everywhere, but I feel like I almost answered that question like accurately at first. It's everything. You just got to be ready for everything, and you got to be nimble, and you got to pivot. And how it looks at first it should never be your ultimate blueprint. You should be ready to constantly keep drawing blueprints over and over and over till it clicks. I always say it's the combination on the safe. Keep turning it till that thing opens up, and be ready for that. If you don't have the stomach for it, then don't even bother.
Yeah, definitely. That's very good insight. So I imagine that also some of the challenges that came with all of this idea and the execution of it was the trying to validate the idea, and maybe the as an MVP also, like what was the process that you and try to implement in validating the idea of CarZeus and the platform itself. What was it like?
So mainly it was speed. You heard me talk earlier about how we got a vehicle on an appraisal we were looking to give somebody a value on, and I had to call 3 or 4 different people and have 15 to 20 minute long conversations with each one of them. Well, that just wasted everyone's time. I mean, I didn't like to do it. The salesperson hated it. The customer hated it. Everybody hated it, right? So it was a matter of time. And, and then moving forward, I felt like that there was another opportunity that I could see where people going to, say, Kelley Blue Book, for example, huge resource out there on the internet for people to go in and get values of not only vehicles, but RVs, motorcycles. I mean, you name it. They got all kinds of stuff out there. They first started off as a resource to give information, and they about a couple of years down the road or whatever, they turned into a lead providing source. So they found out, well, we could be a resource, but we could also find a way to monetize this, and we could gather information and have people put information into the system and then turn around and resell that information, right? So that told me, my light bulb went off, that there's a faster way to do something, one, but then number two, people are wanting information without committing to anything. In other words, they'll give you a name and a phone number, an email address, doesn't mean they have to answer you. A lot of times what I found is that, and this goes with any sales process, if you find a piece of the path in the sales journey, sometimes you can actually get leads generated in your system by using a different path than somebody else is doing. So in other words, I'll give you an example. A dealership is constantly, or the automotive business, they're constantly telling you what they want to sell you, okay? They're constantly telling you what they want to do for you in terms of what car they can give you for what price, what payment, what down payment, what color, what availability. There's all of these things they want to tell you they can do for you. I felt like the biggest part was that they didn't ask what they could actually do for you, meaning like what do you have that you want the answer for? They kept selling and they didn't actually advise. And in this case, I felt that there could be a resource out there to give fast information that also could combine that with somebody that was probably at the end of the day still wanting to monetize something, but they could actually just give information. And I think that applies to so many industries because there's so many industries that are so focused on selling you something, they forget to ask what they might be able to help you with first. And I think that's what we executed pretty well.
Okay, great. So I see it was a long process, but also like, try to act quickly about it, because you also have to make the implementations, as fast as they can, as fast as you can, so you can, try to test it and see what works, see what doesn't.
Yeah.
So now talking about the whole process of the exit, did you actually consider an exit from the start, from the beginning of building CarZeus, or did you consider that idea later on? Why did you decide it?
I've always had the same answer for this question, and the answer is I'll never build something that I am guaranteeing that there's an exit, but I'll always build it with the emphasis that it can have an exit. Mm-hmm. So branding, marketing, culture, people, process, products, all of those things are very, very crucial to what could end up being purchasable at some point. To answer the question direct, no, I didn't build this to make an exit off the bat. I built it because I felt like it was the right thing to do. I felt like people really needed the answers quicker, and that this thing could be just done way better. And if in the event, we put it together so well and somebody wanted to buy it one day, that it actually had the legs to do that. So yeah, it was kind of in the back scenes, but it was never the intention. And I feel like I'll carry that forward just because that's kind of who I am, but I'll carry that forward no matter what. I always said I'm fine with working on this for the next 20 years, and retiring happily because it's done so well over the 20-year time frame. But if somebody just so happens to want to come along and buy it, I'm fine with that too. But that was always secondary.
Okay. And so, like, what was, like, if somebody asked you directly, like, and if a founder asked you directly and said, I have this startup, do you think that I could sell this? What would be the reasons that this founder would need to consider in order to actually, go through with the exit?
Well, let's see. Clarify that a bit more for me.
Right. So this is also trying to understand, like, what could be the reasons behind why would someone sell a startup that, even so it may have like a lot of potential itself. Mm-hmm. So, mm-hmm. Basically, like, trying to redirect that question even to you, like what were the reasons that you consider in order for you to actually go through with the exit?
Yeah, I think everyone has probably their own reasons. So mine might be different than others, but you might also want to consider the direction of the industry. You might want to consider the attention of the industry. You might want to consider competitors of the industry and how you match up against them. Those were some of mine. Some of them are probably different for other people. But I think for us, it it was simple in the fact that we could see how things might be heading a certain direction. And, you know, COVID really did a number on the entire world, obviously, and changed many things and forced many things to be put in place. And it went very quickly. And so I think there's always something else that is in need of you know, of improvement, and sometimes your efforts are better spent in certain places, and so you have to assess both sides. I always say, if I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. every day and get to work and put in my, you know, 10 or 12 hours per day, where is it going to be most effective for me? And so I think that that's a factor personally. So that's kind of an answer for personal, and then maybe industry, and then of course, you know, assess where you're at in your company.
Right. Okay. So, and then I noticed that, or some of also our audience may have noticed that in Phil's LinkedIn, you know, description of, you know, the experience of CarZeus. At first, it was named CarZeus with ZUS, and then you changed it to CarZeus. What? I'm just curious, like, why was that name changed?
Yeah. So much like any you know, entrepreneur starting something, my recommendation is not to go full-fledged into anything until maybe you've proved a few things out. The play up on the word Zeus was Z-U-Z. The real spelling of Zeus, Z-U-S. It was a price tag of $4,000 to buy that URL. And at the time, I was like, $4,000. That's a pretty nice little ad campaign in a local zip code here. Like, I could probably do, you know, a pretty decent job with that, you know, on a Google ad or a Facebook ad. So the choice was, you know, let's see if this thing has legs first. Let's just name it something. Let's get it off the ground. We're going to have to explain it. We know that, but is it interchangeable into something that does kind of tie it all in? So even when we did the ZUZ, you know, we still put the lightning bolt in it because it still represented Zeus, the god of, you know, the god of lightning, right? And then eventually when we partnered up with a VC, with a local VC here out of San Antonio, Texas, they also asked the same question. Well, why didn't you do that? And that's the reason. They said, well, we've got the 4,000 now. Can we go ahead and change it? I'm like, that's exactly what we were waiting for. So yeah, that was the reason for it.
Okay. Yeah. And
start cheap is the point. Start cheap.
Yeah, I agree. I think that you know, if like if you know, naming and branding and all that stuff may need to come after sometimes. So first focus on the product, and then you worry about, you know, the face, the image, branding, etc. It's a very good take. So what now looking back at the moment that you started working on this idea until today, the year after the company was sold, what would you do differently?
And I don't know if I'd really change much. I think the past, everything happens, you know, for a reason. I think if I could redirect anything, I probably, the way the brand shifted and ended into the actual vehicle acquisition component, I may have actually taken that first year. Year to year and a half was the time we spent going after the SaaS model to become a plugin for car dealership websites. I probably would have changed that year and a half into how it actually ended the rest of the time, which was the vehicle acquisition component. Mm-hmm. I think that was probably a big one for us. Now, I will tell you, the vehicle acquisition component would have never been developed the way it did unless we had that testing time with the other parts. Like, that other part literally helped build what the vehicle acquisition software and service did for the community. So that's why I'm like, man, I think it just kind of happened how it was supposed to happen. And you know, it might be similar for some people listening right now on this webinar. Is you may even feel like, man, I'm kind of stuck with something right now, or you're ready to make a decision, or you just made the decision to pivot and turn it into something else, and maybe you're not seeing the result like that. My recommendation is, if it's in your heart and gut, go with it, feel it, and don't, you know, don't feel bad about what you think is what you may have wasted time on before, because you didn't waste time. You're at where you're at for a reason, and you're at where you're at because you already did that first part.
Right. That's great. That's great insight. So was there, in any point in time, was there a moment where you considered, you know, giving it up, that, you know, that you thought that it might not work?
Yeah.
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 How did you deal with it?
I mean, I'm telling you, and then again, people on the phone, whether you're you know, you're dealing with it right now, or you're gonna deal with it at some point, like, you just got to have the gut for it, and you got to believe in what you're doing is right. And I'll tell you, there's one really huge thing that I never want to die with, and that's regret. And so if you feel like there's a glimmer of hope in your idea and what you're doing and the reason, like, and it's actually supporting, you know, people, like, keep going. It's gonna produce at some point, I promise.
Great. Thanks for that. So we're now opening our Q&A section. So people, feel free to write your question in the chat. That'll be great. You can also, you know, as Pao said, you can also ask Phil directly by turning your speaker on, your microphone. So yeah, feel free to ask. Open mic time.
Yeah, I'll introduce it like, you know, like school. There is no dumb question. I'm ready for them all.
I would like to start with a question here, if it's possible. I would like to learn more about the process of selling your company. How do you make an agreement with the buyer? How do you decide the price, the legal documentation about that? If you could elaborate a little bit more, Phil, on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So first step is obviously, you know, conversation of interest. In our case, we had a few people that were interested in this model, and the company that ended up purchasing us wanted it for public reasons. Truly, they were a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ, and they had interest in increasing their revenue numbers, and the revenue numbers turns into stock price or stock or share increases, and share increases obviously, you know, increase investment, right? So, and attention. So for us, it was a matter of a few conversations, obviously a letter of intent. After the LOI, then, you know, there's an offer, and during that time, or after that point, then you go into your due diligence phase, where, you know, the entire thing's picked apart, and that way they've got all the information that they need to make a decision. And then from there could be a renegotiation of pricing. And after the renegotiation of pricing, there may be some additional terms. Then at that point, it's kind of a we owe you owe thing, where you've decided, look, I'm going to take this on. You're going to take this on as your liability. You continue with this, I continue with that. In our case, there was a turnover of permitting and licensing that we had to have through the state. And close was a pretty fast one, it was about a 45 to 45-day close. Once the LOI was done, conversations were about 2 weeks before that. So 60 days, which is very, very fast, by the way.
Okay, that's great. And after you sell the company, do the client ask you to stay on the management team, or how does that work? Okay, okay.
Yeah, and I mean, it's up to everybody, right? And of course, up to you personally. But in our situation, I kind of came along with the package for a limited amount of time, and then after that, I exited, and they ran with it from there. My term was about 45 days after.
Okay, great. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Lamar, for the question. Who else? Remember, you can write also in the chat if you're too shy.
I would like to ask something.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, like Phil, were you ever at a point in which you think your team's mission of CarZeus or like the culture could change whenever you sold the company? How would you?
Yeah. So you know, I like to kind of compare, or not compare, but I like to look at other CEOs' management style, because their management style dictates what sort of culture that is created within the company. And one of my most favorite ones was I don't remember his name at that particular moment, but the gentleman that owned or that ran Southwest Airlines for a very long time. Really fun guy. You know, he put his people first. That's what we did. And you know, unfortunately, you don't know what's going to happen after that. You can't guarantee what happens after that. And I guess, you know, one thing to kind of talk about is, once an acquisition's happened, if you are asked to stay on, and they're willing to pay you and you're willing to take on that, then you know, maybe make it for a limited term and then reassess once you start working together. Because you don't really know right off the bat what type of culture that the new company is going to bring in. And as much as they want to say things and tell you things that, you know, they want you to run things and be a certain way and nothing's going to change and all that, like, the fact is that's not reality. Reality is it's all going to change. So point being is, you may want to, you know, if you're pending an acquisition, or if you're ever looking at an acquisition, just remember that one thing, like, set yourself up for you know, 30, 45, 60, even a 90-day term to, you know, to date for a little while before you get married. See if it's a good fit for both of y'all, because somebody taking over and you staying on, I think that exit rate, probably like an 80% exit rate. It usually doesn't work out. And that's the reason why to set those terms, is because there could be a payout at the end of that term that helps you capitalize on even more of your time for dollar, or your dollar for time.
Thank you very much, Phil.
Thanks, Pat, for the question. So we have a question from our friend Fahim. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He says, how did you get your first set of customers? And how did the SaaS model lead you to the car purchase model?
Yeah, good questions. Thanks, Fahim. So I'll start with the SaaS question first. Much like I was talking about pivoting, the SaaS model, I actually ended up in Detroit at the top of the building, or probably midway through the building, I guess, pitching the SaaS model to General Motors when we were only 4 months old. So it was pretty cool to be in the meeting room and see Canada across the street or across the water, and pitching a SaaS product to a, you know, international company that them themselves were trying to bring on something that had to do with what we were doing, which was offering, you know, answers to people with cars, or for cars that they already owned. we hope to have a couple of those meetings and maybe become successful with one of those and onboard. Our threshold was 200 dealership rooftops. We knew we needed 200 rooftops for it to start making money, and for it to support the infrastructure that it needed, and that didn't happen. So of course you go back to the drawing board, and so our pivot was that if we couldn't get to the 200 store cap, we needed to pivot into something where we got their attention. And so this kind of answers the next question. Our first set of customers with the SaaS model were acquired literally one by one by one by one on LinkedIn, to every dealership personnel that we knew or that would even talk to us to begin with regarding our plug-in model. I found that very taxing. I found it a very slow process. As anybody knows in business to business, half the time spent on just finding out who you're supposed to talk to begin with. And then from there, you don't even know if they're going to talk to you or not. So I decided to pivot to the model where they came to us. And in order to do that, I had to acquire what they wanted. And what they wanted was inventory. Once we started acquiring inventory, it was very quick. Sorry, 4 months. It was 4 months from when we started the vehicle acquisition model to when the VC was actually in our office asking to come in and presenting an offer. That next set of customers was pretty traditional in Facebook ads, Google ads, that sort of thing. So great question, Fahim. That was a big part of our story, actually. So those are great questions, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Fahim. Anyone else that might want to ask more questions to Phil here? Remember, you can open also your microphone. Right. Well, I have a few more questions here. So what is next for you now that you've sold the company, now that you've had this success story after your successful exit? What's next for you?
Well, what's next? The first thing I did was I got caught up on life. I went and did some of the things that I needed to do while I wasn't doing a startup. And then the next thing is I wanted to do some startups that were a little more fun. So we actually opened up a, you might laugh about this, but it's a fun one. It's a juice and smoothie business out of food trucks. We literally just launched one, and we'll be launching one at the end of the year. And so the goal is to get to 3 or 4 of these by 2023. And to me, it's more personal. I wanted to make much smarter, healthier choices in my life, and I feel like our community can use that as well. We live in South Texas, in San Antonio, man. We're known for some of the best tacos around, and trust me, I love them. But man, we got to have balance. And I have been on a very good personal journey recently that has opened my eyes to more health conscious, and also mental health conscious as well, which is why I wanted to do something fun. Not that CarZeus wasn't fun, but when people are dealing with cars, they're a little different than when people are coming to get a smoothie. So that one's for fun. And then I've got some other things that I'm working on to include some consulting time as well. Because obviously I drove the boat into a couple icebergs because we had to learn. It's just a natural part of it. And so I like to see people succeed. I like to help people succeed. So I offer consulting as well. For existing businesses or new businesses, to help people, once again, not drive the boat into the icebergs, because I happen to have a little bit of information on that. And then there's there's a couple industries. One of them still in automotive that I'm working with right now on a consulting deal, and the other one is on the construction side of the business for consulting as well. So just trying to help people. A lot of people helped me, so I'm trying to give back.
That's awesome. So the FoodZeus truck.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's great. Great. So if I'm just trying to open the mic again, if anyone else has more questions, feel free to put them in the chat. So continuing, what current recommendations would you give to, or maybe like, what would the 3 things that you would recommend to a person who's starting a startup business that has a profile which is, before we began this session, you told us that you were not a technical founder. You were not in a sense a person that knew developing and platforms and programming languages and all that. What 3 things that a founder who is not a that does not have a technical background would have to consider or before launching his startup?
Yeah, so that was a big one for me because that did start back in 2008, where I got bids from people that could build the product. And I think one of the most important things is to kind of think of it this way: is like you're the general contractor of building the house, but you're not the person that's actually going to go lay the foundation down to the home so somebody can come build the structure, and then they can put the roof on it and put the windows on and seal it all. You got to go find those people, and you got to do the work to vet companies, to vet people. No, you don't have to know how to do it, but you got to be willing to learn it as well. My opportunity and what I got to do taught me a lot with our developer, and I'm in a much better position today because I met that developer, and it's given so much back to us. And so I think you really have to just realize, like, you might have to go through 1 or 2 people before you find the right one, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So don't commit to any long contracts. Definitely be able to do your due diligence on folks. Call their past builds. I mean, if they can't provide you with a name and a phone number that you can call people and reach out to them and talk to them about their work, like, you probably shouldn't be doing business with them. And a lot of times, if they've worked with somebody already, maybe even that maybe it's on a referral base. In our case, that was kind of the situation here, and that's the advice on that part.
Great, that's good. So find a it doesn't matter if the person that you found first is not delivering. You can always look for someone else and try to keep working on that. That's great advice. And we're closing in on the last minutes, so I'll be brief. Paulina asks, what advice would you recommend to the entrepreneurs in the current recession we are all facing?
Very simple. Double down, because no one else is going to. One of my biggest wins was in the last recession that we had in 08-09. Everybody in the automotive business, at that time found something to find negative. And I just decided to go at it a completely different way and literally double down, work harder, work smarter, do more, offer more, provide more. And it really paid off. So that's my advice. Double down.
Awesome. Great. So any kind of recommendations of books or media in general that you would like to share to the audience?
So I'm not a reader. I'll listen to audiobooks and I'll find, a few nuggets here and there off YouTube. So I don't have any recommendations. Actually, I have a lot of people recommending stuff for me. So I'll actually put the question back on the audience, man. If you guys have something that you think I should be listening to, I'm also the guy that I'm the type of person, like I'm not the smartest person in the room, but I'm definitely willing to outwork some people. So yeah, if you got books for me, send them my way. I can't tell you how many times I've had people ask that question, and I have to be honest. I literally go in and just do it, and that's how I learn. And there's something to say about that as well. But I'm pretty sure I might be a little further along if I actually did stop and read some books. So so don't take that advice part from me. So keep reading what you're reading.
All right. Well, everyone, feel free to share with our guest here, Phil, any recommendations. Yeah, definitely. That's a great answer too.
I'll take it. Yeah.
So
honest, man. It's honest.
Yeah, definitely. We can see that you go through the honest way. That's really good. So where can everyone follow you? Maybe you're not as active in social media, but still, maybe somebody here would like to contact you and ask for any advice.
Yeah, absolutely. So everything on all the sources is my name, Phil Kandera. So you can contact me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, any of those sources. Phil Kandera, Phil with one L and Kandera with a K. So.
All right, great. Well, now we're ending our webinar session. First of all, I want to thank everyone that is here. For everyone that wasn't able to join, we are recording the session and we'll send the session to everyone else. So, if you want to watch it again and if you want to listen to it as a podcast, definitely you can do that too. And I also want to thank Phil for being our accepting to be our guest speaker. We're definitely getting some huge value here for our community, and anything else, please we can still contact each other and do great things together. Also for the community, thanks a lot for being here. Thanks a lot for the Simbiosis team. Thanks Sanabao for all the writing and everyone in the chat and managing the session. And well, thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks a lot, Phil.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Have a good day.